Hello, this is Abby Mickey, women's cycling reporter for Escape Collective. If you're listening to this podcast, that means that you already must like the content that we create, or at least you're intrigued about some of the things that we have to say. Unlike a lot of other podcasts out there, we are coming to you without ads. We're not trying to sell you any supplements or nail polish, and the only way that we're able to do that is because of our members. And in order to continue making all the great content that we do, we need the support of you, the listener. If you're not a member of the Escape Collective, I'm here asking you, imploring you, maybe begging you to consider signing up for a membership. It's super easy. Just head on over to escapecollective.com/member. You can sign up to support the awesome things that we do over at Escape Collective, because if you like what we do, support us. Become a member. There's a lot more to it than just giving us a couple bucks, and that's being part of the community that we've created at Escape Collective, the Discord, and high-fiving rights if you ever see any of us on the ground at a race in the grocery store. So consider signing up. Ask your friends. If you know your friends listen to these podcasts or read our site, then maybe give them a little nudge. Encourage them to become a member. Once again, it's escapecollective.com/member. And thank you so much for all the support so far in this journey at Escape Collective. Hello and welcome to the Wheel Talk podcast. My name is Abby Mickey, and I'm here with friends to talk about women's professional road cycling. Today with me, Matilda Raynolds.
G'day team. Woof, straight off the bat. Love it. Excited to talk women's cycling.
And fresh off of Unbound.
Ooh, I wouldn't say fresh. I'd say like crusty and old off Unbound. But yes, I completed and finished Unbound.
Well, we should actually probably ask you about that officially whilst in the meat of the podcast. Today, we also have a very special guest, Shawn Clarke, DS for Liv AlUla Jayco, Canadian, husband of Carol Ann Canwell, one of the best of all time. Hello.
Hello. Thanks for having me. Or do I have to say good day, good day?
It's true.
I think you
this
say
is
howdy.
A heavily Australian podcast. Hey, but oh my God, this is like the first time ever that Canadians outnumber Australians.
It's a big day for us.
Yeah. Still the Commonwealth. It's the Commonwealth. It's fine.
Nah, does the Commonwealth still exist?
Well, the Com Games don't, so I don't really know why we need it anymore. So But what a moment to have Shawn on. We've just come off the bat of watching, like, literally minutes ago, the very end of the Tour of Britain, and what a moment for just, Shawn to be rushing on just to gloat on what that stage looked like. So yeah, excited to break down just so much. Like, I'm here in Girona, and yeah, the only people that are here are people that are injured, because there was just so much racing happening this past weekend in women's cycling. So yeah, excited to go through it with you guys.
I'm super excited to talk about Tour of Britain. And I think when you watch the first three stages, it was kind of just like, Tills, you and I were texting, like, what are we going to talk about? Another SC Works sweeps all four stages of stage race.
Yeah.
Is this really going to be what we're going to be talking about again? But no, we had like an incredible first sprint that like had some tie-ins to the final sprint, a lot of story arcs, narratives going on at the Tour of Britain. We also had some pretty dynamic racing at the Volta a Catalunya, and we'll talk about that as well, because that was where the bulk of the peloton was. Actually, I thought it was interesting that there were more World Tour teams in Catalunya than there were at the Tour of Britain, so we can definitely talk about that. And look ahead to Tour de Suisse, which comes up this weekend, and we'll see a lot of the top riders of the peloton return to the World Tour racing. So that should be a pretty good race leading into the Giro coming up. We got the Giro. The Giro is officially on the radar. We can see it. So a lot to discuss today. Before we dive into all of that, We're conducting our first ever listener survey for everyone who consumes this podcast and any of the other Escape Collective podcasts. We want to know what you think about this show and what you think needs improvement, what other shows you listen to, and what other podcasts you'd like to hear from Escape Collective. Your input helps shape the direction of this podcast itself, as well as others we create in the future. And it really helps, from my perspective, as someone hosting the podcast, make the podcast more personalized to people listening to it from home. All of your information is kept private for the sole purposes of making this podcast and the rest of our Escape Collective podcasts better. So head on over to escapecollective.com/survey and leave your feedback that will help us improve our podcast. The link is also in the show notes, so make sure to click on that and fill out the survey. It takes only a couple minutes, and yeah, it makes our product better. And we want to always be improving. So thank you so much to anyone who's already filled that out. And thank you if you're currently doing it as you listen to us talk. Also, a huge shout out to Alex Cavell, who became a lifetime member recently of Escape Collective. We love our lifetime members. It's pretty amazing to have that kind of backing. So thank you so much, Alex, for signing up for that lifetime membership. Let's talk about women's cycling. We'll start with Tour of Britain, and I think we should start at the beginning, because how the first stage ended and how the final stage ended, they tie into each other, but there was definitely a lot that happened in the middle as well. So first stage came down to a 9-rider group that sprinted for the win, and it was Lotte Kopecky who took the win, but Letizia Paternoster, who's having one hell of a year this year, thought she'd won it, and it was very, very close on the line. She was really close. She threw her arm in the air thinking she'd won, and Kopecky, after the stage, before they'd actually announced the results, was thinking like, I don't know. She thought she got it. I thought I got it. And in the end, it was Kopecky that took that win, but very, very, very close for Letizia. Almost won that stage.
Yeah, Shawn, how was that for you watching?
Well, I was standing in my living room by myself, screaming at the TV like a crazy person. It was super exciting. But I think, like, I don't know, you see so many close finishes. And I was the same. I was just like, oh, if Letizia put up her hands, probably she won. Because, like, the best people to know are the two that are on the line. But like, in the back of my head, I was like, oh, it's pretty close. Like, she was coming with speed. I don't know. So anyways, it was pretty exciting. Like, our group chat popped off for a little bit until it came out that she was second. But I mean, I think where we're at this year is we want to win. We go into every race wanting to win, but a second place is still pretty exciting. And we're a team that likes to celebrate those. So yeah, a bit disappointing to be so close to the win, have Letizia thought she won and have it taken away, but still a second place. We were all pretty jazzed for that, for sure.
And knowing that she came second, not from celebrating early, but absolutely taking everything to the line. But equally, like Shawn, that second place was I don't know any other expression than a bee's dick. Like, it was so small, that difference between the two wheels. So yeah, like it was, you could put a blanket over them really. And Lotte herself wasn't sure, but I think just some fantastic teamwork there. Of course, Ruby again played a key role, and that was just a really exciting breakaway. We had 9 riders in that breakaway, which ended up setting up pretty much the GC for the rest of the week, really. And the cream was really rising to the top.
Yeah, and like, I think like the work Tennille did on the climb before that really set up that move going. Like, when Tennille's on fire, she can do a lot, and it was really cool to see her just like torch the bottom of the climb and then allow that group to go. So that was nice to see her do that and contribute on a climb. Like, usually she's a super important part of our lead out and on the classics, but to see her do something like that on the climb was, I was, again, cheering in my living room by myself. It was cool.
I was curious about this. So, like, aside from Tour of Britain specifically, you guys have multiple DSs. All the World Tour teams have multiple DSs. How do you kind of divvy up who does what race?
That's a good question. I think, every director has a bit their strengths. Maybe it's races that they've done a lot before, or maybe they did it as a rider, or regions that they're more comfortable with. And we just sort of sit down. We have a director's camp in November or December where we look at the calendar and we divide it up. and we make sure, our most experienced directors are going to the right races. But then we also move things around to make sure people aren't on the road too long and there's actually time in between to plan. So it's kind of like this push and pull where, obviously there's some directors that are like really good at the cobbles and the classics, but they can't be at every race all spring. Otherwise they're burnt out in May. So we kind of just sit down and just do something that makes sense. Typically I'm a bit more with the climbing group, but I like to jump in the spring a little bit to relieve, and they're just cool races. So we're in a lucky spot that we send 2 directors to every race. Which is it's just really nice on us, and it lets us, even if we're on the road for a long time, there's not as much load on us. So that helps a lot too. But yeah, we just sort of sit around in a room and just say who wants to do what races and what blocks and who's in charge of what, and we all get along super well. Even with the merger this year, we brought in Wim and Casper, and everybody just gets along super well. And yeah, I mean, everybody fights for some of the bigger races, like everybody wants to do Paris-Roubaix, but I think but at the end, everybody's happy with their schedule. Yeah, there's not really a lot of science to it.
Yeah, because we've spent a lot of time on the podcast questioning why we've not seen more of Anna Van der Breggen at the races.
Gravel racer.
And they obviously have, yeah, now she's doing the gravel scene. They also have, Lars Boom and Danny, so they've also got multiple DSs, but it's a really interesting like inside scoop, because obviously us at home, like no one, I think more people are recognizing names of DSs as more big names come into the DSing roles and it becomes more of an interesting topic. It's definitely not something that I think many people who aren't in the core niche fan group of cycling would know, like who DSs what teams. I think it is becoming more normal that we talk about who DSs, and that means that people are noticing when certain DSs are at certain races. So
yeah, I think that's the direction the sport's going to go too. Like if you look at football or hockey or whatever, whenever there's a bad call, the camera just goes straight to the coach, right? But in cycling, somebody does something weird on the road, and we're starting to see more and more cameras in the cars, and you're starting to know a bit more who the directors are. And I think it just, okay, like for me, I don't really want that, but I can understand the fans wanting that inside and wanting to see the expression from, the director who's, like not standing on the side of the field or behind the bench, but in the car. And I think we're starting to see it more and more with the ASO project of race radio. You're starting to get that communication piece, a little bit like what they do in Formula One. And there's been a few races that have had cameras in the cars and showing the directors. So I think it's a trend that we're seeing. And like you said, there's more big names going into it. So there's a bit more recognition there and people are noticing. Yeah, so it's an interesting development for us anonymous sports directors.
Very cool. Okay, well, back to Tour of Britain, stage 1, and the first stage really set up the GC class, the GC conversation for the whole race, because that group of 9 finished almost 4 minutes ahead of the rest of the peloton. So when it came down to the GC, it was really up to those 9 riders, and really between Kopecky, Paternoster, Dagnan, I really had high hopes for her. Pfeiffer Georgie, there were some really, really top names in there. Christine Myers, who we'll definitely talk about by the 4th stage, and Anna Henderson. A really strong ride by Aline Jensen from Volker Vessel's women's team. That team is just, because their kit is so
bland.
So I'm trying to think of
unremarkable.
Oh, it's just so bad. Too bad, because like Park Hotel was one of the coolest kits in the peloton. They had such unique colors and the bikes matched it, and now it's just like they look like, I don't know, like an early 2000s.
Yeah, exactly. I actually I didn't put it together that they were the same team until Lauren said something, because I'm so used to Park Hotel having like one of the best kits in the peloton, and then there's Volker Vessels with their.
It's not bad. It's just bland.
But yeah, so the team that we know for developing strong riders, they developed Demi Vollering, among many others. Weebus, many good riders have been on that team. So nice to see them getting a rider up there. And same with Saint Michel, Mavic Aubert 93. They had a strong start to the year. So having Victoire Gilman in there was good for them. For the second stage, it definitely completely shifted the GC conversation, focusing more on two riders. Lotte Kopecky and Anna Henderson rode off the front on one of the bigger Category 1 climbs of the day and rode the two of them to the finish. Kopecky took the stage with Anna Henderson taking second, and they definitely did try to get away from each other unsuccessfully. And Weebus won the sprint for third, 20 seconds behind the two. So with a race like this, and we know this race has come down to bonus seconds in the past, it was when you've got a gap of even 20 seconds, it makes a huge difference in a race like Tour of Britain. And I think for Henderson, getting second on this stage and being able to follow Kopecky is a huge deal given the season that she's had, 2 broken collarbones, and this is her first race back after breaking her collarbone at the Vuelta. So a big deal for her, and really great to see, honestly, because she's one of, I don't make it, it's no secret that she's one of my favorite riders, ex-ski racer. So pretty cool. But yeah, I love to see her up there following Kopecky and made the stage a little bit more interesting.
Yeah, just for some of the listeners who may not have seen the whole of the race, just to add here, so Visma, Lisa Bike, and Trek weren't actually here. So Anna Henderson was a part of the Great Britain team that they had put together, as well as Lizzie Dargnan, and they had a really strong team. So it's always cool to see those riders who are against each other year round and then come together, particularly with the Olympics selection coming around. And yeah, as you say, Abby, like great to see Anna Henderson come back. I'm pretty sure Matt dropped her in his fantasy league, so sorry for him. But he had Ruby, so he's picked up a few good points this tour, and of course Lotte Kopecky. Yeah, and I think we'll as you're saying there, just how important the seconds are, and that's what makes the Tour of Britain so exciting, is everyone's buying for those sprint points as well and those bonus seconds. We can never forget one of the greatest tactics and moments of all time in cycling when Grace Brown was in the leader's jersey and Elisa Longo Borghini took it from her, I think in the finish sprint, or she got a bonus second, or like I need to rewatch that last bit because absolutely pulled Grace Brown's pants down. Like it was a tactical genius, and she took it there, not being a sprinter, but they snuck her up there in third to get those bonus seconds and ended up swiping the win from FDJ. So it has a lot of history here with bonus seconds, and I think people haven't forgotten that. So it's a really good tour in terms of fighting for those points.
That was kind of the debut of Longo Borghini being a finisher, wasn't it? Like everybody was like, she had to be third or something to do it, and everybody's like, there's no way she won't sprint that well. And then she did a good sprint there, and ever since then she's been like not a pure sprinter, but she's been good at finishing.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that was like the first one, I think.
Yeah.
Totally, yeah. And yeah, she won that. I think she won that edition, the 2022 edition, by only 1 second when she finished third on the final stage.
Yeah.
So it's definitely like it came down to 1 second in the final stage and the final sprint.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's why the bonus seconds are such a big deal in this race. And I mean, seconds on the line meant that even after the second stage, Anna was still 17 seconds behind Kopecky in the overall. But that's something that, going into the final stage, which was completely chaotic and insane, is she could have made that up. So it's not that big of a gap. And like we saw so many times in stage races this year, Vollering winning the Vuelta by minutes. It's just a very different game, a race like Tour of Britain.
Yeah, and a lot more opportunity. I think we'll come back around to this, but I think there was a lot of discussion before this tour started around UCI points, and Shawn, it'd be great to know whether you've heard anything around. So to be awarded full World Tour UCI points, there needs to be at least 90 starters, and they were just below that. So hopefully World Tour points are awarded for those teams that turned up, but it gave a lot of opportunity to those Conti teams, and even more so a lot of of the local UK Conti teams when we know the cycling in UK and professional cycling has struggled. And so, yeah, I think Lloyd's Bank, I think it's called, who is the main sponsor of this, this race, despite some gaps being in the ability of some of the teams that were there, certainly needs a lot of kudos around the coverage of the event was fantastic. The fact that I could watch it
full days on
SBS, but then also I could watch the whole thing free on YouTube. So that was just amazing. I didn't realize that. And so full credit on their coverage. And that's really majority of what we asked for. So I think, yeah, a lot of teams, lower teams would have loved to have been here as well. And just the type of racing created a lot of opportunity, as you say there, particularly for Volker Wessels and some of the more local teams. Like to get a top 10 in a world tour stage race is a really big deal. So yeah, I think the event on its own deserves, and just they were doing such great stuff just with the fans, and you saw some gorgeous imagery of Lotte Kopecky giving a boy and signing her winner's jersey and him just almost breaking down crying. He was so excited. So just some really good imagery came out of this event. I think that they should Lloyd's Bank and whoever else propped it up certainly need kudos for that.
Yeah, and also for just pulling it together from when it was canceled to when it was back on. Like my partner Caro runs a race, and I know how much work goes into, working with local governments and closing roads and all the planning and who goes where when, and to actually pull it off just organizationally, whether there was cameras or not, or publicity is actually pretty amazing in the timeline that they did it. So huge kudos to them for just organizing a good, safe event. Yeah.
But Abby, we've got to talk about before we finish on this stage, and I know you wrote an article about it, Life Plus. Wahoo. They were scrambling.
Yeah, poor Life Plus Wahoo. I mean, one of the continental level teams going into this race, but still one of the teams that's been around for quite a long time and put many riders into the World Tour, and a team that has in the past had goals of going World Tour. They had a lot of high hopes and almost folded twice, and really they've had some turbulent years, and this is their home race with a reduced peloton, not as many World Tour riders. So really a good opportunity for them to walk away with the results. Wake up the morning of the second stage to find all their bikes have been stolen overnight, which is just the worst nightmare of any mechanic, to wake up and find that. And yeah, it's not the first time and definitely not the last time that this has happened, but just such a huge bummer for that team. And they were staying in the same hotel as 3 other teams at the race, and they were the team that got targeted. And it turned from like a worst case scenario story to actually quite a feel good moment when the rest of the peloton rallied to make sure that the riders could continue. And I mean, even I think it was Babette was riding Danny Stam's personal Specialized that was painted in the Bulls Dolmans colors. And I know that Heidi was riding Anna Trevisi's bike, one of your riders, Shawn. So it was pretty cool to see the peloton rally.
I saw Heidi, who I know, go for like the Queen of the Mountains, and I was like, oh, it's like one of our bikes. So that's cool.
There's a couple of upgrades there, I think, for some of the riders. But Shawn, do you leave bikes and vans?
Yeah, I mean, there's just too many bikes to like bring into a hotel room, and then some hotels don't want you to do it. And I mean, you can only do so much. And what we're seeing more and more is like hotels will rent private security while we're there.
Yeah.
So there's just somebody at least walking around at night. So
because you got to imagine we're talking, I think it was over, I did a quick Google on, I could only find, I'm not sure the exact bike, but the Rival bikes on, it's well over 90k euro value, even more so on those bikes. Like, and if you think about that type of value just sitting in your van, it's it's just such a harsh reminder for everyone.
Yeah, and I don't want to like advertise for thieves, but like we have a van that does the rounds and then goes back to service course. So we don't just have the bikes for the riders in that race. Like at Andalusia, we had the bikes from everybody who did the Vuelta, Burgos, Itzulia, and Andalusia. And, there's a lot of
Mm,
similar riders there. But then if you think there was like a time trial at the Vuelta and, people coming in, some people have 3 bikes, some people have 2 bikes. Like, I think we had like 40 bikes going around Spain.
mm,
And, so it's not just the 6 people at the race. Like, if they steal all the bikes, and I'm sure maybe LaCole isn't the same, or what are they now? Life Plus? Maybe
mm,
because they're in UK, maybe they only had
mm,
the bikes for the 6 riders at the race, but it's
mm,
still a
mm.
huge knock. And I saw in stage 3 that they were back on Ribble bikes. So I don't know. I missed that news story of
Yeah, they
Pretty
how
amazing.
that.
Yeah.
Ribble delivered a whole
Mm,
extra
Oh,
chunk
wow.
of bikes to the team hotel after the second
That's
stage, so
mm,
that was
amazing.
super cool that they a plus of having a British being a British team with a British sponsor
mm,
was that they were able to get bikes super quick for the remainder of the race. And but yeah, the 14 bikes that were stolen was half of their whole fleet. And for a smaller level team like that, it's not as easy as just like calling up Ribble and being like, hey, we need 14 replacement bikes, because Ribble isn't a huge company either. So it's like a real blow to a team like.
We're a big team, and Giant is one of the biggest ones,
mm.
bike brands in the world.
Yeah.
I'm sure if we called them up, we couldn't get it either. It's just like
Mm,
that's just the way supply chains are. I mean, we could eventually for sure, but
mm,
like that would be a struggle for any team for sure.
So a real blow, and they were hoping for Heidi to try to take the Queen of the Mountains jersey. Heidi said after the race that her motivation was super high, even with the bikes being stolen. I think having the peloton kind of rally around them made her feel even more motivated
mm.
to race on the Friday on the second stage. But she was like, "Oh, I just can't believe that I'm like fighting with Lizzie Deignan for Queen of the Mountains points." Which, I mean, I love Heidi so much. It's hard to knock her positivity, and I think for the team itself, yeah, it would have been just a nightmare scenario, but made better by the fact that pretty much every single team like supplied them with a bike. Cofidis gave them look bikes. They had a factor from Volkovessers from when they were Parkotov Valkenburg. They
Mm.
had a ton of teams offer them bikes. So yeah, a huge deal, and just one of the reasons that we love women's cycling.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a big family.
No one would have worked harder than those mechanics than delivering however many bikes that night that needed to be revealed the next day. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
seriously, those mechanics deserve a cake
Yeah.
or something.
Mm,
But yeah, actually, that's a good point. It wasn't even just the teams that gave them bikes. It was also the mechanics of the other teams helping to get the bikes set up for the riders,
mm.
because the fit wouldn't be the same, obviously. So helping to get all those bikes set up, it was really like a team effort, which is just really, really cool.
Yeah. Very cool.
But do you guys remember that time? I don't remember which race it was. I feel like it was Strada, maybe, that I think it was Trek had their van broken into, and they cut a square out of the roof because they like backed up cars to all the
Oh,
doors, so it
yeah.
was like impossible to get into the van.
Wow.
But they like crawled over the cars, cut a hole into the roof, and stole the bikes that way.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean, there's only so
insane.
much you can do, right? Like,
Yeah, it's well known you should have a vehicle behind. I've yeah been a part of a brand that has lost an entire trailer because of full of e-bikes actually, which was even more expensive. I think it was over 100K. But yeah, if you're parking your van with something precious in it, usually put another vehicle behind it. But I haven't heard of that. I think if go gadgets getting in there through the roof, it doesn't matter what you do. But yeah, I think it added to like it was such a shame for them being a smaller, lower budget team in particular. It was a huge blow, but I think it's a really nice vibe the following day. And yeah, as we said, just really good with the fans and the kids and the school kids that were coming out. So yeah, just added to it.
Third stage was the only bunch sprint of the race, won by none other than Lorena Wiebes, the unbeatable Lorena Wiebes. Charlotte O'Cool taking yet another second place behind Wiebes. She's got to be real sick of that. by now, and Georgia Baker coming in for third after a really great lead out from Letizia, actually.
Yeah, it was very messy this sprint, gosh, and that's the challenge as well. When you don't have a lot of the top teams there, that it can all of the lead outs seem to be falling apart, then reforming, and that washing machine just sort of kept moving around. You know, at one point, Lotte Kopecky was quite far back, and then she ended up, as she does, rolling to the front and leading Lorena out. But yeah, it's great to have Shawn on. I think it was quite evident there that they were then leading out Georgia Baker. What was the, talk us through that, Shawn? Was that just with opportunity, or Georgia's seen as a better sort of track, flat, power sprinter?
Yeah, exactly. Like Letizia's really punchy, and she get over the climbs really well. And if we have her in a stage race, she can sprint on the flats for sure. But our performance team does a really good job of digging into the numbers, and we sort of look at it stage by stage and look at it from a GC perspective. What's the best way to pick up all the bonus seconds and everything? So it was just sort of laid out at the start that stage 3 would be for Georgia. It suited her a lot better. We have like a really good sprint crew that includes Georgia and Letizia, and they both sort of swap places depending on what the stage finish looks like. And sort of starting at UAE Tour, they've been really good at discussing how each of them see the finish. And as you can probably imagine, like Letizia is a very upbeat Italian style. It thrives in the chaos, and Georgia's like really calm. She likes to hold her position. She likes to battle for it, stay where she is. So to have each one leading the other one out has really taken some time so they can see it the other way. And I think just as we go through the season, it's just getting better and better, and they're really gelling well. We saw that in Ride London too, when we had to swap, and Georgia got collected by the lead out rider stage 1. That was supposed to be for her, but Letizia jumped in, and then after that, Georgia jumped into her lead out to be her lead out rider. And they've just been working really well together. And when you put people like Tennille and Shauna in front of them, it's actually starting to become a really, really good system that we can play around with a little bit. So that's a really fun thing that we like to talk a lot about on our performance calls, is this sprint project. And yeah, I mean, Lorena's fast, Charlotta's fast. We know Georgia's fast, and we're just trying to get her to a place where she can really battle. And she seems like she's the closest one there, and she's making up ground. So we're excited to see what we can do throughout the rest of the year and some of the flatter sprints with Georgia.
Yeah, I think some of the best lead outs come from people who have experienced, sprinting at the highest level. Yes, as you say there, Shawn, it can be different depending on your style. But, I think that's what makes, Ruby such a great lead out. She's used to being led out herself, but is, what we saw there on some of the stages, just taking control, knowing I need to take control here and lead from the front to keep the speed up, seemed to play a really crucial role in this as well. But yeah, I think one World Tour team that was here that didn't really have a great showing was Human Powered Health, and I think they're really missing Daria Pickling from this. She would have had a great, I think, go at some of those sprints, but yeah, she crashed recently in one of the races, I think, and is out. But certainly they were one of the key World Tour teams that pretty much missed every key selection, I think.
It really was it really did come down to pretty much like DSM, Firmenich, Post-Nel was up there a lot of the time, and especially on the first, second, and fourth stages, they were really aggressive with Fight for Georgie, who would have been a great pick for the overall as well as like a stage of this race. And ST Works Pro Time were obviously their usual selves, and then Liv AlUla Jayco had a great showing. But yeah, it was there was one other World Tour team in the race, and that was Human Powered Health. And I think that they'll be walking away from the whole race a bit disappointed. Pretty much the only showing they had was Christabel Double Hickok on the attack on the final stage very, very briefly. But other than that, they've had strong performances this year at lower level races, but this is just kind of another instance of them not really having the ability to step it up to the World Tour level, even if there isn't a full roster of World Tour riders there. And I do wonder if they would have done better at a race like Catalunya with the terrain there and the riders that they have available. But I also think that there's, like their top rider arguably is Ruth Edwards, and she's currently at home getting ready for the rest of the season. And so I don't think it's like a wash. Like they'll definitely have more good performances, but of the World Tour teams that will be fighting for World Tour status, come next year when the points roll around and we're back to a reset of who has an opportunity to get a World Tour license. It will be interesting to see if they can step it up.
Yeah. And I know it's just a tough time of the year. Like there's been so much racing happening that like, I just looked at their team that they have here, and it is kind of their good, like they're good riders. Like it's a top team from them, but I feel like there's a lot of people that are just on fumes right now. If you did the whole Spanish block and you're coming out of it and then you had to travel up to Great Britain, like it could be that they're just a bit flat. Because I know we're actually pretty lucky in this period that we don't have any sicknesses or injuries, but we're basically running at maximum. And if we had a lot, and when I talk to other teams, everybody's the same, where people are getting tired. It's time for a mid-season break and a rebuild, and you've got these extra couple of races. So, I mean, I think we've seen a few weird performances where people have underperformed in the last, I don't know, 2-3 weeks, starting in Andalusia or Ride London, and now this. Even Catalunya, there's a few questionable ones. And I think it's just this block has been so long that teams are struggling with rosters and fielding people. So I think you're right. Like maybe Catalunya could have been better because it suited them more. But I also really value World Tour teams that go to the World Tour race, and I think that's important. And, with all this great Spanish racing happening, we still knew as a team like we had to go to Great Britain. And it's pretty easy to say we're not going because of the carnets and the travel and whatever. But I think it's actually, they deserve a clap on the back for going to the World Tour race as a World Tour team, even if it didn't really work out.
I totally agree.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. It's obviously not a rule on the women's side that the World Tour teams have to race the World Tour calendar. They can skip races. And I mean, we saw Visma Lease Bike sit out a bunch of the races earlier this year as well. But, and there were, there's only 4 World Tour teams that went to Britain. And it's a bummer because it's, especially for the sponsors of the race, like Lloyds Bank, who put in so much effort and had such amazing coverage, to then not have the peloton take the race as seriously. The riders that show up obviously do, but to have so many teams skip the races is a huge bummer. And I think we still got some amazing racing out of it. The 4th stage in particular was just amazing. Like from the beginning, it was just relentless attacks. The weather made it even more dramatic. It was just a torrential downpour. Poor riders after the race just looked freezing. Anna Henderson could barely get a word out in her post-race interview. But it was such a good final stage. And I feel like every single rider who showed up for the final stage and for this race, like threw everything that they could at the race. And it was great to see. And I think, it's not a knock on human powered health. It's just like, it just happens. Like teams have off periods of time all the time. And it doesn't mean anything about the riders that they have or the staff that they have. It's just the way things go.
No, and I do feel, as I said, like if they'd had Dara here, then they would have, been absolutely fighting for it. And maybe that's just a bit of a, they've been attending a lot of the 1.1 races in Belgium that we've been at. And so I think potentially if they'd put in, more into this one, but that's just a scheduling and hindsight really. So, which I think is really tough. But yeah, stage 4, such a good day. Like surreal, and it's just so exciting. We get to watch it. Like I didn't really see any of Catalunya, which looked really exciting, but I have no idea and I have no emotional feeling around it really. But yeah, really invested around Tour of Britain because I was in it and watching it, and obviously, good friends of Rubes, and so yeah, we saw, as you're saying, we just really aggressive racing. We saw breakaways. We saw the top GC riders get away and then sort of look at one another going, well, none of us are going to achieve anything greater really from this group, and seeing it all come back together for the sprint. And I think, and of course, Serena Wiebes would be the top rider there. We saw Lotte Kopecky leading it out, and Christine drop the wheel. I sort of was wondering if the drop of the wheel was intentional, and I thought, oh, Lotta's got this. She's, dropped the wheel, which is such a baller move. I love that when teams, like, it's terrible when you're on that train and you're realizing what's going on, but it's so good. That's such a baller move when the person that's in second drops the wheel and the lead out rider carries on for the win. But we saw Kopecky stop pedaling in the final 200 meters. And yeah, do you want to take it up from there, Abs?
Man, just such a weird situation, right? Like the whole stage was just so active. You had like Lizzie Deignan off the front for a really long time. She said after the race that the whole goal of Great Britain was to make the race as hard as possible, because the harder the race, the more chance that Anna Henderson would have of gaining seconds on Kopecky and trying to fight for that leader's jersey and retain her second overall if worse came to worse. So it was like just super active from them, from DSM, Firmenich, PostNL. We had Pfeiffer Georgie on the attack and multiple of their riders trying to go off the front. And then it came down to this group of 25. And yeah, like I think Kopecky just put in too much of a dig and Majerus couldn't quite match it. And then you knew that they said before the race that they wanted to win all four stages. And I think they had this idea in their heads about Majerus winning the final stage. She loves racing in Britain, so it would have been really fun for her to win the final stage. She's retiring at the end of this year. She's been, one of their longest running domestiques, one of the most faithful domestiques in the peloton for many, many, many years. She really doesn't win many races at all. And so for her, it would have been just this fairy tale moment for her to win the stage. And then so I think Kopecky knew she was coming, and you had Wiebes cheering on Majerus going into the finish, but Majerus put up her arms and stopped pedaling like 5 meters too early, and Ruby was just coming in with more speed and just didn't stop pedaling. And so it came down to, like the width of a piece of paper, and Ruby won the final stage.
I just keep seeing Lotte. Lotte was watching this thing happen in slow motion when she was the one to cause the slow motion. And you can see her seeing Ruby, and she cuts in, starts trying to come towards Ruby to squeeze her a little bit and put pressure on her. And then as it's happening, she's like, go, 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 no, no, no. And like, yeah, and also like says, in Belgium, what the F at the very end there when seeing but slightly before that as well, Abby, we've got obviously Patacosta, she had a flat puncher just before outside of the 3K to go. So I wasn't sure if they were riding for Christine to try to get that third spot on the podium as well with bonus seconds, etc. But so you had this slip away from Jayco of having her on the podium to then Ruby winning the very last stage. And you know what's going to happen? No one will remember how this happened. The results will only show that Ruby absolutely embarrassed SD Works that came second, third, and fourth. Like that is all the results will show, and that is all she will tell everyone beyond today.
Oh, it was like such a roller coaster of a final 4K for the whole team, because you had Letizia, who would have been, the rider of the day, and Ruby said after the race that they were all in for Letizia. And then just outside 3K, she got a puncture, so 4K to go. That means that 3K rule doesn't apply in terms of seconds, but even then, it's seconds. It's like it's real close in those two spots on the podium. And then and then Ruby said, like, she just said in the radio, "Do I go back?"
And I was watching her.
She was
like,
told, "No, keep going."
Yeah.
And so she's just fighting for it, like pretty much up there on her own, fighting for position, fighting for that win, and walked away with a World Tour victory over 3 SD Works riders.
Good. How was it those moments when we were all waiting to find out if she'd done it? It did look like she had, but you never know.
I have to be honest, I was down in Barcelona. I took the train down. to watch the final stage
Oh yeah,
of
Catalunya.
Catalunya. So this
Yeah.
is the only stage I didn't watch live, but I was able to rewind it and watch it on the way home. And yeah, it was just chaos. And I mean, so happy for Ruby. Like, couldn't happen to a nicer person. And she had a bit of an injury there in the spring. So for this to be one of her comeback races and get some results, like, to me, that always hits a bit harder when somebody's come back from something. But I mean, just super well deserved, anyways, no matter how it happened. And she's been knocking on the door for what, like 2-3 years now to get a win. Like, she's had some good results, but to get the win, she's been knocking on the door for so long that it's pretty cathartic for the team too. Who, like, we've been part of the journey, we've believed in it, and we've wanted to see it, and we've set her up for it, and now for it to happen is pretty special. But I saw her post race interview, and she said a little thing about like having mixed emotions taking it from measures. And yeah, I think everybody in the peloton feels the same way, and like, because Caro rode for the team for so long, Measures is like a friend of Caro's and does a lot of artwork for her, and like, everybody wanted to see her win also. So like, it's a bit of a tough, like, if Weebus or Kopecky would be second, like, you could just be fully happy. But not that I dislike those riders, but just that Measures deserves a win also, and but couldn't be happier for Ruby. And hopefully the team really celebrates tonight, and hopefully the flights are out tomorrow and they can really enjoy it, because it's pretty cool to see her coming through the middle there.
And just for Ruby to take the final stage in a photo finish after Letizia lost the first stage in a photo finish.
Yeah.
Just like,
you couldn't write it better.
Just beautiful.
Put a bow on
it
that.
was so
Put a
good.
bow. It was very, It was
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
Oh no.
Oh man.
I think
overall, the final stage really made the race. Like, it sold the race for me. It was just such a good final stage. There was so much that happened, and so many riders who like really showed up wanting to make something happen. And so it was really great to see. And like, Ruby's just such an awesome person. So for her to win.
Couldn't happen to a nicer person. For sure.
Yeah, she was so funny after the race when Bex asked her, when did it sink in? And she was like, it hasn't.
Oh no, it's amazing. Yeah. But she rightly has every right over, Christine to win that stage.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
And what Ruby's come from and how long she's knocking at that door. She's had so many top fives, and it's just so difficult to win a sprint stage in a world tour at the moment. So yeah, absolutely. However it has to come, I think. And you just do feel like, I know she's won a lot, like even when Weebus lost that sprint for celebrating early, like there is a part of you that feels for them for sure, because it's like, how do you go away with winning the green jersey, the yellow jersey, the team's class, and still be disappointed? It was a bad way to finish on the day for SD Works, but I'm sure they'll have another race to get over it quickly.
I mean, I hope Mazurus goes on to win like a stage of the Giro or something, just to make it up.
Yeah.
Because we all want to see her win, especially 100%. In her final year. It's just, she's incredible. But yeah, it was a real like head scratcher, face palm.
But I mean, also like,
oh man,
not measures, but like, when anybody celebrates early, there's a part of you that just loves the drama of it.
Yeah.
For sure this is going to be headlines, and you're like, oh, the story from this is going to be great. You feel for the rider, but also like the drama coming out of it is good. There's going to be memes.
Kopecky did not love the drama.
Nah, probably the last time Kopecky.
Man, you could see her face.
The last time Kopecky
like,
gives
you could
a
see
win.
her looking. Seriously,
honestly, you slow.
She was
down.
looking sideways.
I know, when you slow that,
and
down,
she knew.
I know.
Yeah,
she had her arm up for the win, and then it slowly came to her head as like, oh no.
Oh god.
Kopecky took the overall, so they still got to take the overall of yet another stage race. That means they've won every single World Tour stage race except TDU. Yes. So since UAE, they've won every World Tour stage race this year.
That is outrageous. Jesus.
Yup. But at least they didn't sweep another full stage. They didn't sweep all the stages again. So we had Ruby breaking that up, and making sure that they didn't win all 4 stages. Let's just really quick talk Catalunya, because there was a handful of the top riders there racing, and talking to one of the DSs on the ground, she said that she thinks that the reason there were so many teams there instead of Britain was because a lot of the riders live in Girona, so it's basically a hometown race. It was really easy for riders to do it, and the terrain of the 3 stages was better preparation for the Giro and better, more dynamic racing than they would have gotten in at Tour of Britain, leading into the hillier stage races coming up later this summer. So we had, Visma Lease Bike there with Voss. We had Movistar was there, Certeza WNT, AG Insurance Sudal had a really strong team there as well, Uno X. So in the end, it was 2 riders basically winning the stages. Ali Wilson took the 1st and 3rd stage, and Marianne Vos won the 2nd stage mountaintop, which has not happened for quite a long time. Vos winning on a mountaintop. I think there are 2 interesting talking points from this race that we could get into. One of them is the 1st stage sprint. I don't know if you guys watched that, but it was, Visma Lease Bike and AG Insurance Sudal pretty much did all the work the entire stage to get to a reduced bunch sprint. Because of the terrain, it was a bit of a reduced bunch. And going into the sprint, it was Voss versus Wollesen, and Ali definitely deviated from her line a bit, knocked into Voss. Voss looked pissed after the finish, but they still gave Wollesen the win for that stage. And I don't know what the degree of deviation has to be. It seems that there isn't actually a
I was going to say, does anybody know? I don't think commissaires know either.
Yeah.
For sure, if there's a crash, that's too much. But other than that,
depends on the commissary and what they decide. And from what I heard, the commissary was quite lenient at this race. And Ali definitely, the head-on shot and also the overhead shot, you can tell that she's sprinting, and there's the middle line on the road, and so you can see that she deviates. And it did take a while for them to post the results, so I don't know if there was some deliberation, but Voss went on to just completely demolish the next stage. Visma Lease Bike were super aggressive all stage, and they reduced the peloton by the time they hit the second QOM to most of their team and a couple other riders. And so when Voss attacked on that second climb, she was able to get away solo and ride solo to the end, and basically that stage won her the overall as well. She finished second behind Wollesen on the 3rd stage. So for Voss, 2-1-2. It's Voss.
On that sprint, Abby, what I did watch from it is all sprinters know what happens under the tree canopy where the helicopter can't capture it, stays under the tree canopy. But yeah, I think to see Voss is always so excited. Gosh, Visma Lease Bike had a field day out there. They had 5 riders in the top 10, and then they had their brand new signing, isn't it? Femke de Vries. She was,
they just signed her last week.
Yeah, she was 12th. So yeah, she was at some of the Belgian 1.1s, and so yeah, just a fantastic start for her. I think Kim Lacourt did really well, both in the for AG Insurance, both in the sprints and the Helia stages, and ended up 4th on overall. But then so Rihanna Marcus was 2nd, and there's still a few rumors around about where she's going. She's certainly signed a new 3-year contract. My understanding is she's staying there, but there's a little bit of discussion around possibly going to Trek, but sounds like Trek, but this would have been a good vibe. But maybe them fighting out 1-2. She's going to Trek. I'm not sure. Shawn, you're in Barcelona on this one. So how was the race?
How the vibes were in Barcelona, because pretty cool for a stage the final stage to end in Barcelona for a 2.1. That's a pretty big deal.
And I think we went to Andalusia too, and both of these races are very similar, where it's run by the men's organization, and they really want to build up from a smaller race into a bigger race, and you can really see that the race has the bones of a much larger organization, and just the fact that they're able to close down roads in Barcelona shows that the regional and city governments are all on board, and they probably have a lot of support there because they finished like right at the base of Montjuic. I think it wasn't exactly the finish line that the men had, but it was like right around the corner. So I don't know if maybe they're trialing that so that next year they can finish on that Montjuic loop, which would be pretty cool. But yeah, there's lots of talk about those two smaller Spanish races getting bigger. I think a little bit like Flanders Classics, like start small, make the growth manageable, build every year, try to invite some bigger teams and build the stoke, because like Andalusia was great. Like it felt much bigger than the point one that it was. And same for this one. Like I showed up and there was a huge banner and it was right at Plaza de España, right at the base of Montjuic. There was tons of people out. All the teams had their buses lined up like prominently, so it looked really big, and they did a good job of not hiding them around the corner. And I thought it was great. I didn't watch a lot of the racing just because it's Formula One weekend. There's the Criterium de Dauphiné. You have to make your choices. But I did follow the results, and it looked really exciting.
You got Derek G over there. Representing Canada.
I remember him beating up on us as like a 13-year-old, and we were all like racing senior, and he would show up and we're just like, who is this little kid? And now he's like third at the Dauphiné, and you're like, okay.
Amazing.
I feel a little bit better. My 19-year-old self feels a bit better getting looped by him. But no, I think it was really cool. And has the Dutch team been announced for the Olympics yet?
And actually, speaking of that, the pretty shit news for the Dutch team, last week, Ellen van Dijk was in a training accident and broke her ankle. So she's had surgery, and she said in a statement by the Little Trek team that she's still targeting the Olympics, that she has a whole team around her that is focused on making sure that she comes to the Olympics start line in the best possible form. And the plan hasn't changed for her in terms of the Olympics. I assume that her racing schedule will change slightly. I think we probably would have seen her race Tour de Suisse with a time trial on stage 2. But definitely a huge blow to both Little Trek, Ellen van Dijk, and the Dutch team for her to be. I mean, they have amazing backup in someone like Rihanna Marcus, but Ellen's comeback from pregnancy and goal of the Olympics, even when she found out she was pregnant, the goal never changed, and that's something that I would like to see. I just want to see how that story is going to end.
It needs to come to fruition. It's been a great story. But is Voss going? Did she get the nod or no?
Yeah,
she's going. Yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah, but like she was reconning when she was pregnant, like heavily pregnant. That TT course. Yeah. So yeah, it's just so cool cycling with that. But I think knowing the team that's around her, the team that did the 1 hour record, the team that got her back to such full fitness after pregnancy, I do still feel that there's a chance there.
If there's anyone that this wouldn't really impact, it's Ellen van Dijk.
Yeah.
Someone said in the Discord that they also had a broken ankle that they were able to keep riding with. So I think in terms of injuries, like I guess there is a spectrum, because I remember when Hannah Barnes broke her ankle, she was really out for a long time. That was her first year with Canyon Stream. It was right after she signed the contract, so she was still on UHC when she broke her ankle, but it took a while for her to come back from that. So it totally depends on the break, but it sounds like Ellen's is a manageable one, and it will be possible for her to start riding already like this week, maybe 10 days after the break, I think is what they said. So not the end of the world, but not good news.
Just on,
and she's the only domestique really for the Dutch. The Dutch team is going in with 3 leaders and Ellen.
Yeah, she was going to create the balance.
Following Weavis and
and Weaves.
So, and Voss going in now to the Tour, like with her performance at Catalunya, it's not the full peloton, right? But her win on stage 2 it means that there are going to be even more questions going into the Olympics with the Dutch team. If she can win on a mountaintop like that, and I think we'll see her, I assume she'll go back to the Giro. She almost always does the Giro. Last year was the first year she did the Giro and didn't win a stage since like 2006 or something stupid. And so I'm assuming we'll see her at the Giro soon, along with Weebus, I think, but I mean, that's all many weeks down the road. And it'll just make more, what are they going to do at the Olympics with the Dutch team?
I
It's
think,
gonna be great.
yeah, it helps, certainly helps. And I think it was already there anyway, but Ruby's selection in the Australian team, hopefully, I think, yeah, that should be a part of the, qualification to be winning a world tour. But of course, Australia has a history of making things discretionary and more complicated than needed. But one thing
I
I
don't
wanted
think
to
it's
ask
only
you.
Australia. I think a lot of countries
Oh
operate
yeah,
that
we
way.
seem to do it across all sports though. We just like um but Sean, one thing I wanted to ask you that we mentioned just before, how is it for the DSs in such a big transfer season? We've talked a bit about on this podcast that the transfer market has never been greater than it is this year, and seeing so much movement in the peloton.
Yeah, an interesting time, for sure. It's, uh, yeah, I don't want to say too much, but
I'm watching you trying to calculate what you can say.
it's just really interesting because I think everybody knows that everybody's budgets are going up and riders are asking for more, which is good. But as a team, you still have to balance your salary budget, and it doesn't really matter how big that is. You're always doing a balance of how many top riders that you're paying really well to how many lower riders that are paying a bit less, and it doesn't matter how much money you have. It's always a balance. And I think what we're seeing is it's happening so much earlier, and contracts are getting longer, which means that it's not every year that you get an opportunity. So it's like you really have to strike while the iron's hot if you want somebody and their contract's coming up, because like they might sign for 5 years and then they're gone. Whereas in years past, it was year by year or maybe 2 years, and then you could have a conversation for in 2 years, but no one's going to talk to a rider, hey, what are you doing in 5 years? And yeah, and there's a few riders that are definitely worth huge sums of money, but I think there's a bit of a gap there behind them, but it's starting to get filled just by a gradient filling in. So it's a bit funny, like you see riders asking quite a bit and then not sure if they're worth that compared to somebody else. And yeah, it's this whole soup right now, and it's a really interesting space. And as a fan of the sport, I'm just glad that there's like quite a bit of money going around and people are getting paid well, because they all put so much into it. And you see that as a sports director behind, like I couldn't be happier for them. But as a transfer market, it's just weird how early you're talking to riders and how infrequently the big names are coming up. And at our team, we're really into developing riders, where some teams are really trying to buy riders, and I think there's a blend there that's the hot mix, like everything. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting time, for sure. And a lot of it happens above me, which is nice. Like I just get to work with the riders, and I don't have to do any negotiations or anything. But there's definitely a lot of talks with the directors of who we should be looking for, where we're trying to strengthen, and yeah. So, but yeah, it's a very different time now than it was 3 years ago, even 2 years ago for contract stuff. It's just everything's accelerating. But yeah, it's cool. It's really good for the sport, I think. Tough on teams, for sure. It's tough on teams. If you want a big rider, it's really hard to get one. But it's good for the sport overall.
Yeah, it's certainly something we're going to be talking all about a lot more throughout the season.
Yeah, it's only getting
especially
started, I
once
think.
The tour rolls around.
Yeah.
Yeah. The tour is going to be interesting with the amount of people transferring, and the window will be open for announcements.
Yeah.
So that'll be
Yeah.
No better place to announce a new signing than at the tour.
Oh yeah. Anything.
While they're racing for another team.
Yeah. And the Olympics too. Like there's just this section of this season that just has so much media exposure now. And it used to be just the tour, but this year it's like Olympics and tour, and yeah, it's going to be crazy.
Yeah.
Those two things back to back is going to make for a very interesting time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot.
We had a lot to talk about today. I think we should wrap it up with what we're obsessed with.
I forgot
Oh,
you
You
did
guys have
this.
got
obsessions?
nothing,
Yeah, we
Ray.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do. I have a really good one. Okay, so last night, I've only got 2 nights left with my family. So last night we all went out to a movie and we went to see Fall Guy,
Oh, yeah.
and it was phenomenal.
Really?
And I rate this movie a 10 out of 10. No notes. The dialogue was incredible. It was like so cheesy that it went over the line into just never change. And the stunts were amazing. And then after the movie ends, they show you how the stunts are done,
Oh,
like
cool.
in the credits,
Yeah.
which is so cool.
Yeah.
So cool. There was like no special effects. It was all just like stunts. And so I think the whole movie, like it was the plot was like, yeah, it was what it was, but that wasn't the strength of the movie. The strength of the movie was the stunts and the actors that they were able to get and the dialogue and everything. So I highly recommend it. It was very good.
That's good to know,
So,
actually, because I saw the previews and I was like, oh, I don't know if it's going to be too cheesy or
mm,
just cheesy enough. So that's good.
no, Ryan
Yeah.
Gosling's so good though. And yeah. So, yeah.
Good Canadian lad.
Oh, please, you guys. Jeez.
He's a bud.
God, you guys are hot right now. You gotta
Always have been.
Yeah, it comes and goes.
Ah.
Sean, are you obsessed with anything, Sean?
Yeah, well, my shout out will be, or my obsession will be a shout out to my partner, Caro. This weekend coming, she's organizing a race in our hometown. So there's a lot of work that goes into that. And a lot of the proceeds from that will go into the UCI race that she organizes in September. So if there's anybody from Toronto to Montreal region, there's a race Saturday and Sunday in Ottawa, and you should definitely go to that. And she and the other ex-pro Alex Cataford put a lot of time and effort into putting bike racing back into our hometown, and it's really cool to see. And I get caught up with it, and try to give them some support when I can when I'm not on the road, and just to see the final product coming up this weekend. I'm sad I'm not going to be there, but I know it's going to be an awesome event. And I know there's a lot of Canadians who listen to the podcast, so hopefully this gets a few more of them registered and out, or even just watching, because both races are sort of in a downtown core with bars and stuff. It's not your typical industrial park crit. It's really a cool spot, and there's tons of kids races, so it's good for the whole family, all the categories. And I really recommend people to go out and watch the British Grand Prix on Saturday and Preston Street on Sunday. And
Awesome.
I think
Where
it'll
do
be
they
a
go,
good
Sean,
weekend.
to find out more information?
The websites are
Yeah,
the best. I think it's tourdegatino.ca and bikeraceottawa.com for the Saturday and Sunday.
awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be awesome. Yeah.
Perfect.
And this is her
Yeah.
post racing career, is events. And no one saw it coming, and she's awesome at it. It's really cool.
Oh, awesome. That's so good. What an incredible way to give back. And then also, yeah, that's awesome, particularly in that region where there's not too much racing happening, I
Yeah,
don't
North
think.
America needs a little
So,
bit of life breathed into it, and all the bones are there. It just needs a bit of people like Caro and Alex, and
yeah.
yeah, just get it going again.
Yeah, that's awesome. Not really obsessed with anything this week, just yeah, come down from Unbound, but I'll give a recommendation. Brody Chapman actually got me onto this, but there's an app called Time Shifter. I'm not sure if I'll pay for the subscription, but if you travel a lot, it's probably worth it. So it's called Time Shifter, and it helps you get on to the next time zone, particularly if you're going from Europe to the USA, even more so if you're, I imagine, going back down under. But yeah, essentially you put in all your flight details, and it starts giving you notifications and recommendations on when you should be, wearing sunglasses or not seeing too much light, trying to go to bed. It does recommend melatonin, which I don't really take, but if you're able to take melatonin, then it just helps trying to get you on that cycle off for the next time zone. It's really, really clever. And I know a lot of the pros use it. So yeah, it's called Time Shifter. Look into it. The first trip, so I went to Kansas in the middle of nowhere, 3-4 flights. return. The first trip's free. So definitely try it out. And then if you like it, then I get no kickback from this. It sounds like I'm a sales rep. I'm just saying it was a good app to try. And even if you just try it for the first time, it's just a good reminder to maybe like 2 or 3 days out, if you've got a big trip, start looking at what time it is where you're arriving to start trying to get on that same time zone. So yeah,
that's
time
really
shifter.
cool.
You're welcome.
That's super interesting. Actually, we didn't ask you about Unbound, but we'll have you back on the podcast and ask you about it.
It's another time. It's another time. The race took too long.
Especially this edition with the first like women's only.
Yeah, it was elite, mate. There was SD Works tactics, there was domestics, it was all happening. It was great. Loved it.
All right. Well, Shawn, thanks so much for the last minute call up. It was awesome to get your insight into many things.
Yeah. And congratulations.
Yeah,
it's great to see, Jayco fighting for it and getting some positions on the board that they deserve. Yeah.
Yeah. It's been a great season already. Nice to have that win for sure.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Tour de Suisse next week. You going, Shawn?
I'm not. I'm on vacation mode till the Giro.
You said you were following your climbing team.
Yeah. No, I've been on the road since Binda, so I got a couple weeks off now, and then I prep for the Giro. But I don't know what to do with my time. I'm doing crazy here in Girona.
I was hoping I could do a deal with you. Like, if you're in the team car, you could help me out. Maybe give me a little.
I'll let Wim know. He'll help you out.
Swing. Yeah.
Yeah, Tour Swiss is going to be awesome. I've got a full preview in the Wheel Talk newsletter, so if anyone wants to look at the stages, they're there. But it'll be the first stage is going to be very
opens with the Queens.
Have fun.
It's always a bit of a zany race. Like cool stuff happens. I think it's offbeat from what the rest of the world does, and I think it really has its place in the calendar. It's cool. It's just a bit different, and I like it.
A lot of riders coming back, so I think we're going to see Vollering, Rooser, Kashiniwadoma said it's on her calendar, so it'll be a stack field. All right, we'll talk about it next week. Thanks, you guys.
Bye, team.